The wedding planner said it softly, like she was asking about dietary restrictions. There's been a change to the guest list. The ballroom smelled like fresh flowers and floor polish. White chairs lined the aisle. My daughter was standing beside me, holding a tiny silver basket she had practiced carrying for weeks. She won't be walking, the planner continued. The bride requested it. My daughter looked up at me, confused. But I'm the flower girl, she whispered. Across the hall, my sister-in-law avoided my eyes. My mother-in-law adjusted the pearl necklace at her throat. It's complicated, someone muttered. Complicated. My daughter's fingers tightened around the basket handle. The satin ribbon brushed against her small knuckles. I didn't argue. I didn't defend. I just stood there and realized something cold and clear. This wasn't about logistics. It was about belonging. We adopted Lily when she was 4. She had serious eyes and a habit of lining up her shoes neatly by the door, even in other people's houses. The first night she slept in our home, she folded the blanket herself and asked if she was allowed to stay tomorrow. That question never really left me. My husband, Mark, cried quietly in the hallway after she fell asleep. Not because it was hard, because it felt right. His parents said all the right things in the beginning. We're happy for you. She's lucky to have you. My mother-in-law even brought over a pink sweater and a stuffed rabbit. She called Lily sweetheart in front of neighbors, but something small always felt slightly measured. At family dinners, Lily sat beside me while the other grandchildren ran freely through the house. When photos were taken, my mother-in-law would gently reposition her. Maybe stand on this side, dear. This side, not center, not quite inside the circle. I told myself I was overthinking it. Have you ever convinced yourself something is fine because acknowledging it would make it heavier? Mark didn't see it at first. She's just adjusting, he'd say. Mom doesn't mean anything by it. And maybe she didn't mean it. But meaning and impact aren't always the same. When the wedding plans began, Lily was the first to volunteer. I can throw flowers, she said one evening at dinner, sprinkling rice across the table as practice. Everyone laughed, even my sister-in-law, Rachel. That would be adorable, she said. So Lily practiced. Every weekend. She walked slowly down our hallway while I played soft music from my phone. She learned how to smile without looking at the ground. Mark filmed her once and sent it to the family group chat. The responses were polite. Heart emojis, short comments. No one objected. Until 3 weeks before Christmas. That's when Rachel called Mark privately. He came into the kitchen afterward looking unsettled. She thinks it might confuse some guests, he said carefully. Confuse them how? I asked. He hesitated. Because Lily isn't biologically related. The word landed quietly between us. Biologically. As if love required documentation. I stared at the Christmas lights glowing softly around our window. She's been practicing for months, I said. I know, he replied. And that was the part that hurt most. Everyone knew. The official message didn't come from Rachel. It came from my mother-in-law. A text, polite, carefully phrased. We think it's best if Lily attends as a guest only. It will keep things simple. Simple. I stared at the word for a long time. Lily was sitting at the dining table, coloring a picture of herself in a white dress with a tiny flower crown. She had written her name at the bottom in uneven letters. I walked into the bedroom before responding. Mark was already there, phone in his hand. She says some relatives might not understand, he said quietly. Understand what? That a child can belong without sharing DNA? Have you ever noticed how prejudice hides behind the word tradition? Did Rachel ask for this? I asked. He nodded slowly. They don't want questions during the ceremony. Questions. Like Lily was a footnote that required explanation. I thought back to the engagement dinner months earlier. My mother-in-law had raised a toast and said, "Family is everything." Everyone had clinked glasses. Lily had clapped excitedly beside me. Family is everything, unless it needs clarification. The signs had been there before. At Thanksgiving, my father-in-law referred to Lily as Mark's project. He laughed afterward as if it were harmless. At a birthday party, a distant cousin asked, "So where is she really from?" I had answered calmly, "She's from here." But the questions lingered. Now they weren't even pretending. They were restructuring the wedding around her absence. Later that evening, Lily came into the kitchen holding her flower basket. "Is Aunt Rachel excited?" she asked. I knelt down so we were eye level. "She's still planning things," I said carefully. Lily nodded and spun once in the hallway, practicing her steps. She didn't know she had been moved to the margins. Not yet. Mark sat at the table long after dinner, staring at nothing. "They're just worried about optics," he said finally. Optics. I almost laughed. When did our daughter become a visual inconvenience? Have you ever felt the moment something shifts from subtle to deliberate? I picked up my phone and typed a simple reply. "If Lily isn't welcome in the ceremony, we won't be attending." I didn't add emotion. I didn't accuse. I pressed send. 3 dots appeared immediately, then disappeared. The response came an hour later. Not from Rachel. From my mother-in-law. "You're overreacting. This is Rachel's day. Please don't make it about yourself." Myself. I read the message twice, making sure I hadn't misunderstood. Mark sat beside me on the couch, elbows on his knees, staring at the Christmas tree we had just decorated. Lily's handmade ornaments hung unevenly on the lower branches. "It's not about me," I said quietly. He nodded. "I know." But knowing and acting aren't always the same. Another message followed. "She will still be in the photos. We just want to avoid awkwardness during the ceremony." Avoid awkwardness, as if the presence of our daughter was a disruption to symmetry. I thought back to the rehearsal dinner invitation draft. Lily's name hadn't been listed originally. When I mentioned it, my mother-in-law said, "Oh, I assumed she'd be with you." With you, not with us. Have you ever looked back at small exclusions and realized they weren't accidents? The pattern was no longer subtle. Lily wasn't being uninvited entirely. She was being repositioned, shifted to the side, allowed to attend, but not belong. Mark finally spoke. "If we don't go, it'll cause a bigger issue," he said. Issue. The word hung between us. "Is the issue that Lily exists?" I asked. He closed his eyes briefly. "That's not fair," he said. Maybe it wasn't. But neither was asking a child to step aside for comfort. That night, Lily crawled into our bed. "Will Grandma see me throw the flowers?" she asked sleepily. I brushed her hair back gently. "We'll talk about it tomorrow," I said. She trusted that answer. Children always do. Lying awake later, I stared at the ceiling and listened to the soft hum of the heater. Outside, the neighborhood was quiet. Christmas lights blinked steadily across the street. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a decision. And if they were willing to redefine family in public, what did that mean for the rest of the year? The next morning, I made pancakes like I always did on Sundays. Lily sat at the counter, swinging her legs, humming softly while I poured batter into the pan. The kitchen smelled like vanilla and butter. Normal. Warm. Ordinary. I watched her carefully. She was still excited about the wedding. Still practicing her steps. Still believing her place was secure. Have you ever felt the weight of protecting someone from a truth you wish didn't exist? Mark sat across from me, stirring his coffee long after the sugar had dissolved. "We can talk to them again," he said quietly. "Maybe explain how much this means to her." Explain. I had been explaining since the day we brought her home. Explaining that adoption wasn't charity. Explaining that love wasn't conditional. Explaining that belonging didn't require matching faces. At some point, explanation starts to feel like auditioning. That afternoon, I stopped rehearsing arguments in my head. I stopped drafting long texts. Instead, I opened my calendar. The wedding was 2 weeks before Christmas. Flights were booked, hotel reservations confirmed. I canceled them. No announcement, no dramatic message, just quiet clicks. Have you ever noticed how powerful silence feels when you stop asking for permission? Later that evening, my mother-in-law called. Her tone was tight. "Are you really going to miss your sister-in-law's wedding over a misunderstanding?" Misunderstanding. "She's our daughter," I replied calmly. "There's nothing unclear about that." "She can still attend," she insisted, "just not in the spotlight." In the spotlight. As if joy was something reserved. Mark sat beside me, listening. I didn't look at him. "If Lily isn't fully welcome," I said evenly, "then neither are we." There was a long pause on the other end. "You're making this difficult before the holidays," she said. Holidays, the season of family, the season of inclusion. I hung up gently. That night, while Lily slept, I wrapped Christmas gifts alone in the living room. The paper crinkled softly under my hands. The tree lights cast a warm glow against the walls. I wasn't angry. I was distant. Something inside me had stopped trying to win approval. I wasn't planning revenge. I was planning clarity. And clarity often changes more than arguments ever could. The rehearsal dinner invitation arrived 3 days later. A formal envelope. Thick paper, gold lettering. 3 names were printed inside. Mark, me, no Lily. Not even as and family. I held the card between my fingers and felt something settle deep in my chest. Not shock, not even anger. Confirmation. Mark read it twice, then looked up at me. "Maybe it was a printing mistake," he said automatically, but he didn't sound convinced. I placed the card on the table and walked to Lily's room. She was sitting cross-legged on the floor, arranging her stuffed animals in a neat line. The silver flower basket rested beside her bed. "Mom," she said brightly, "do you think Grandma will sit in the front row?" I knelt down beside her. "Yes," I answered honestly. She smiled. "Then I'll wave to her." I swallowed. Later that evening, Rachel finally called. Her voice was polite, controlled. "I just don't want the focus shifting," she explained. "Some of our older relatives are traditional. They might ask questions." "About what?" I asked. She hesitated. "About how things work." How things work, as if our family structure required explanation like a technical manual. "She's 6, I said quietly. "She throws flowers." "I know," Rachel replied quickly, "but this is my wedding." And there it was. Not confusion, not miscommunication, a choice. Mark reached for my hand under the table, but he didn't interrupt. "Are you asking us to come without her?" I asked calmly. A pause. "If that's what it takes to keep the peace." Keep the peace, at the cost of a child's belonging. Have you ever noticed how peace often means silence from the person expected to absorb discomfort? I ended the call gently. No raised voices, no threats, just finality. That night, I removed the flower crown from Lily's dresser and placed it back in its box. The satin ribbon brushed against my wrist as I closed the lid. I wasn't escalating. I wasn't retaliating. But something had crossed a line that couldn't be re-explained. And once you see the line clearly, you can't pretend it isn't there. The wedding day arrived with clear skies and a quiet house. No rush, no dresses laid out, no curling iron warming on the bathroom counter. Instead, Lily and I sat at the kitchen table decorating gingerbread cookies. The smell of cinnamon filled the air. Christmas music played softly in the background. "Are we late?" she asked once. "No," I said gently. "We're exactly where we need to be." Mark moved slower that morning. He checked his phone a few times but didn't mention the ceremony. A few messages had come in. Photos from the venue. Smiling faces. No one asked where we were. Around noon, my mother-in-law called. Mark let it ring. Then it rang again. Finally, he answered. I watched his expression carefully. "She's asking why we aren't here yet," he said quietly. I kept icing a cookie shaped like a star. Tell her the truth, I replied. He stepped into the hallway to speak privately. Lily pressed a gumdrop into the center of her cookie and looked up at me. Can I still wear my white dress for Christmas? She asked. Yes, I said softly. You can wear it whenever you want. Have you ever chosen absence not as punishment, but as protection? Mark returned a few minutes later. They're upset, he said. I nodded. Are you? I asked. He looked at Lily, then at me. No, he answered. Outside, snow began to fall lightly against the windows, quiet, steady. We stayed home, not because we weren't invited, but because we were clear. The photos were posted that evening. Perfect lighting, white roses, smiling guests. I noticed something immediately. There were fewer children in the ceremony than originally planned. A cousin's toddler, who had been announced as ring bearer, was missing too. Later, I learned his parents had quietly declined when they realized Lily had been excluded. No announcement, just absence. The comments under the photos were polite at first. Congratulations. Beautiful couple. Then one aunt wrote, Where's Lily? She was so excited to be flower girl. Another followed. I thought she was part of the wedding party. The replies became cautious. It was a last-minute change. Just easier this way. Easier. By Christmas Eve, the phone calls started again. Not defensive this time. Measured. My mother-in-law's voice was softer. We didn't expect people to ask, she admitted. I didn't respond immediately. Have you ever noticed how clarity exposes things arguments never could? She's your granddaughter, I said calmly. Not a complication. There was a long pause. We may have handled it poorly, she said finally. It wasn't a full apology, but it was the first acknowledgement. We spent Christmas morning in pajamas. Lily wore her white dress over her leggings anyway, twirling in the living room as snow covered the yard outside. She didn't feel excluded. She felt loved, and that mattered more than attendance at any ceremony. This wasn't revenge. It was alignment. We didn't attend where she wasn't welcome. We didn't argue. We simply stepped back. If this story resonates, share your thoughts below. Sometimes boundaries speak louder than speeches. This wasn't the end of our family story. It was the beginning of something clearer. What would you have done? Comment below.